Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. I'm going to start a series of videos here, and I really want your input on this. Nagarjuna is an Indian scholar, and his teachings are they take the form of an argumentation and are often seen by Chan practitioners or Zen practitioners. Excuse me, Chan being the Chinese character for this type of thinking, not Nagarjuna's, but the Chan sect, and then Japanese practicing basically the same thing, same patriarchs and so forth, called Zen, a Japanese term for it. Nichiren has argued extensively as how this sect has adopted their own view of Shakyamuni's teachings, and they claim Bodhidharma as their, how do they say it, their source from outside of Shakyamuni, or the canon of Buddhism. They cite their source as something additional or outside of Buddhism. So why we tend to call them Buddhists is kind of odd, and Nichiren actually says they're not following Shakyamuni's Buddhism. Shakyamuni is Buddhism, so therefore they are not Buddhism, but they are Zen, or they are Chan. So now we're getting into, argumentation about semantics. But the reason I get into this little foray is because Nagarjuna himself, as a great bodhisattva and scholar of Shakyamuni's teachings, is decidedly not Chan or Zen. Nagarjuna is a scholar whose mode of scholarship takes the form of stating an accepted thought or academic point, stating it, then negating it, and then in order to then construct a correct understanding. And a Western term, or an English term, that's used to, in this writing, illustrate those point-making argumentations are gates. Gates to Nagarjuna are dissected argumentation for the purpose of leaving no stone unturned, no doubt, so that at the end of this argumentation there will be no more confusion about this item. So these are gates because they are gates to properly understanding the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. Now, if all of that makes sense to you, I want to also issue you a caution. Buddhism and study is amazing. It's wonderful. It brings insights into your practice. It reinforces your resolve. It does many things that are important to your practice, no doubt. A gate, if you will. I think that, especially now, having completed hundreds of videos on or podcasts on all of the Gosho, all of the letters of extant letters of Nichiren, and having done a lecture series on every chapter of the Innumerable Meanings, the Lotus lectures, on the Lotus Sutra and its opening and closing sutras. I've also done a lot of discussion on certain aspects of Nagarjuna. The Vimalakirti Sutra, not Nagarjuna. The Lankavatara, also not Nagarjuna, but also used or invoked by Chan or Zen. And I'm very careful to acknowledge, as I will in this reading, the author, the translator and author, because I think that's very important to our study, is to recognize who and what the influences of the author are. As I've said before, there is always a bias. When we deal with translations, especially academic translations, ironically enough, we deal with very expert communicators who inculcate their bias, even if they profess not to do so. They have no choice. It's what they know, right? So they express from that which they know. I understand that, which is why I do this whole series, because my knowledge is less academic and more experiential. Yes, I've studied for over 40 years, but as I've studied, I so have done with the distant eye, the critical eye of the academic and non-academic discourse with my own daimoku and practice to arrive at a contemporary, although at times fumbling, language to describe accurately, imbued by all the wisdom of these scholars, with real-world experience, so that our practice, our sangha, can grasp at a personal experience rather than a dictionary to try to understand terminologies, although that may happen from time to time. That's why we have those tools. But our understanding of Buddhism shouldn't be some unknowable, right, rhetorical practice. Buddhism is a living practice. It's a here and now. It's a real perceptive filter to the maximal potential of expression we have in our lives. That is Buddhism. And if we get caught up with, here's an example. If cars are streaming down the street in front of you, is it appropriate to step out into the street into oncoming traffic? Or is it more appropriate to wait until you see the traffic coming to a stop and that you have a safe opportunity to cross the road? Now, that's a pretty obvious thing to understand in those words, in that experience, is it not? But the tendency is, especially with things like Buddhism, that the scholarship gets wrapped up in the arithmetic formulations of impact from a speeding car, what it does to the human body. Is there significance to the step off of a curb onto a road where cars can be? And you can get so wrapped up in all the rhetorical analysis of the danger of crossing a road that you find yourself in the middle of the road with oncoming speeding traffic in both directions, and you may not survive it. So this is my point. Understand that if you're going to go down this path, reading things like the Lotus Sutra or the Gosho or some of the other Shakyamuni authored sutras are going to be far more suited to an everyday understanding than to dive into the scholarship of people like Nagarjuna, thousands of years older than our current experience. But even so is Shakyamuni, right? But the composition of a sutra is much more directed to the everyday human being. Whereas the compositions of the 12 gates for Nagarjuna, for instance, are academic argumentations. They're not really meant for the average, ordinary person to read. They're meant as scholarly debate. And so that kind of reading isn't for everyone. There have been times in my life when I relished this kind of dialogue and vernacular. But there are also times in my life I recognize when it's can be very tiresome. And ultimately, if it's tiresome, your attention span gets lost and you become involved in word salad. And there's very little inspiration in that. So I don't want you to force yourself to go down this path. I am going to try, because of who I am, I'm going to read through his scholarship, and I'm going to interject a lot, because I want to make this a living exercise for you so that you understand what's going on here. And maybe that works really great for you, and that's great. I just want to caution you that if it starts to seem dry or pedantic or, just not entertaining for you, then I don't want you to force yourself through it. And I want you to continue, even in these podcasts and videos, to put comments about your personal experience or questions about Buddhism, right? I don't want to force an agenda, in other words. So all that being said, I looked around, and every single gate that I see talked about here, it excites me to talk about, and then I realize I can't just pick and choose. I might as well just start at the beginning. And with the caveat that this is a writing, a thesis done by a Chan monk, he does quote Nagarjuna largely, but he has a lot to say about it. So whether I'm quoting Nagarjuna from his translations of the Tibetan, which obviously he didn't have the original, there is reference to the Indian here. The comments and notes translated, introductory essays, philosophy, religion. Yeah, it's kind of unclear whether he's translating the actual Indian documents or Tibetan. It's probably a mixture of both, which is not uncommon at all. But anyway, this is a noted professor. He's not just some random Chan monk. He's he works with the University of Hawaii's religious studies. So it's a very academic attempt or effort at translating Madhyamika and the 12 gates, specifically in this moment. I just want to add to that he is a Chan monk. So let's understand that he has a bias. And wherever I can identify that, I will. All right. We're going to hit on very fundamental aspects of the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. The first of which is causal conditions. This chapter, as Shen tells us, is divided into two parts. The first part is the preface of the treatise. It states the main theme of the book. The second part is devoted to the examination of the concepts of yin yuan, which you will learn briefly. The word yin, hetu, means cause or reason, what puts forth. Lest you think that's an action, it's not an action. It is what I've returned to consistently in the past as formation. So yin means cause or reason. It is what puts forth, right? So it is the formation. It often refers to primary cause. The term yuan, pratyaya, means conditions, cause, relationship by fate or margin. It often refers to secondary cause. So there's a first formation of some energy, and that energy then begins to construct itself. Primary cause, secondary cause, right? For example, a seed is yin, while the rain, wind, summer, sun, farmer, etc. are yuan. But in this chapter, yin and yuan seem to be used together. Yin yuan here means causal condition, causal relation, conditioning, cause, or causality. So what he's struggling with in his definition here is the 12-link causal chain, which will come up later. But there is in the manifesting energy some sort of disturbance, some sort of resonance that is kind of like when you first get an idea forming in your mind. You don't know what the idea is yet, but there's sort of a pausal moment where your mind is grasping at several different groups of energies, if you will, and as they form a thought in your head that becomes an idea, there's this process that builds on itself, right? This is what we're talking about here. In tendencies don't have a manifestation, but they need a certain condition in order to form something. Tendencies and conditions. We're going to keep coming back to these two words, right? Causality has been an important issue in Indian philosophy. Master Shen continues here. Shenjue. The principle of causality is often regarded by Buddhists as well as non-Buddhists as the objective law regulating the rise and fall of all factors or phenomena in the universe. Tendencies and conditions. There are 4 external causal conditions and 12 internal causal conditions, which are enumerated in early Buddhist treatises. So you see, we're speaking of early Buddhist texts largely regarded as, and I know it's a dismissive term, but it's used universally to identify the early spread of early teachings of Shakyamuni, the Hinayana, right? And in fact, they're used by the Tripitaka masters, and just escaped my brain. Anyway, they are the earliest teachings of Shakyamuni. And as we know, those teachings were taught to the people's capacity as preparation to grow their capacity to then more elucidating teachings afterward. Remember the 5 periods? So here we're going to be talking a lot about these earlier teachings that set up, if you will, the Buddhist thinking, the Shakyamuni's training of how to think about things like the universe, life, basic fundamentals, right? Each of them is conditioned as well as conditioning, because that's the nature of the linked chain, right? The things form, and how that formation comes together is a multiplying or falling apart, right? So what we're talking about here is formation as not just one thing, but its degrees of formations, how formations start with a wisp that then draws energy from other sources, other forms of energy, other types of energy, tendencies, and in the proper conditions of these 85 or 84,000 or 2 combine to continue the process of formation. It's critical to understand Buddhism this way because Buddhism is itself a magnifier of exposing the entirety of this process we call life, which includes the creation of the universe and the creation of planets and the creation of beings and the creation of blades of grass. It's all the same thing when looked through a powerful enough microscope. Right? When viewed from the antecedent cause, each is an effect, but when viewed from its effect, it is a cause. Right? So, if you could have the vision of a baseball heading toward a batter in a baseball game, the ball would see the bat as a future effect, right? But seen from the bat, the ball is the cause of getting hit with the bat. Does that make sense? Depends on your point of view. Are you the formative tendency, or are you the condition that sees the tendency? So, you see the form of argumentation here. I tell you again, this isn't for the faint of heart. Some of you may love this kind of thing, but some of you may just think, this is just not useful for me. That's okay. Study something else. Let me know in the comments, by the way. Here we go. The 12 chains of causal conditions are considered as the true picture of the wheel of existence. In this chapter, Nagarjuna argues that all causal conditions are empty. And here we go into the emptiness realm, right? Nagarjuna says, "Now I shall briefly explain the teachings of Mahayana." You see, he's talking to people who are still practicing and raised in, if you will, the Hinayana teachings, and he wants to introduce to them the early Mahayana teachings to take them to the next level. So he's promulgating Shakyamuni's teachings, and he's bringing them along to the next level of understanding of Buddhist thought. Question: what are the benefits of explaining Mahayana? Answer: Mahayana is the profound Dharma store of the Buddhas in the 10 directions of space and the 3 periods of time. It is spoken for the people of great virtue and intelligence. Okay, sorry for that. All right, so right away, Nagarjuna is identifying his audience, right? He's saying this is spoken of for people of great virtue and intelligence. Now, that's not just a simple flattery. What that indicates is what Nagarjuna is going to introduce in this teaching isn't for ignorant people. Not ignorant as in stupid, but ignorant as in unstudied. In other words, he's directly communicating to people who are familiar with the Hinayana teachings of Shakyamuni, and that they're ready now to understand more profoundly through the early Mahayana teachings where this development is going. Otherwise, why bother talking about Mahayana, right? Therefore, the mind of the ascetic, and here it says that's a reference to Gautama before he became Shakyamuni, was diverted from teaching the Dharma, having thought about the incomprehensibility of the Dharma by the stupid. So, I don't think this is a reference to Gautama. Therefore, the mind of the ascetic was diverted from the teaching of the Dharma, having thought about the incomprehensibility of the Dharma by the stupid. This, to me, is an obvious reference to Shakyamuni trying to teach the picture of enlightenment to people who had no idea what he was driving at. This would identify the period of the Kigan Sutra, right? The first sermon just blew everyone's mind. They didn't know what the hell he was talking about. So I had to back off. But the sentient beings of late times are hardly virtuous and talented. Although they seek and study the sutras, they cannot understand. Emptiness, having been dimly perceived, utterly destroys the slow-witted. It is like a snake wrongly grasping or magically grasped or knowledge incorrectly applied. So these people, because of their early studies, think they understand the nature of emptiness, but actually they do not, and therefore they misapply the rest of the teachings, and they don't understand correctly. Emptiness, and Chan being a victim of this, is often considered like a void or a nothingness. But in actuality, as we know from Shakyamuni's later teachings, and even the early teachings in retrospect, never spoke of a nothingness. He did speak of a Noumena, but that is a condition, a state of non-instantiation. That doesn't mean there's nothing. There is always potential. That energy is potential. The potential is an energy. There is always Noumena, but that is not nothing. It is just the absence of phenomena. And that is the first hurdle of thinking in Buddhism. So it's appropriate that would be the first gate, is understanding correctly. Even if you're a scientist like Lawrence Krauss, who wrote a book, Something from Nothing, is identifying that there is nothing, there is no thing that is nothing, because that is the opposite of what a thing would be. But that's the point. That it is not doesn't mean that there is no thing. It means that there is no phenomena that would bring about the formation, the tendencies, and the condition of the thingness. I know it may take a bit to wrap your head around this, but we'll continue and see if it doesn't become any clearer. I guess he makes a comment here. I sympathize with these people and want to enlighten them. Well, thank you for that. So Nagarjuna goes on. To him, possessing compassion, who taught the real Dharma for the destruction of all views, to him, Gautama, I humbly offer reverence. So this is Nagarjuna making the statement that he doesn't wish to supersede, because he's saying these things, Shakyamuni's teachings. What he instead is trying to do is help to elucidate the people he was teaching to the depth of the concept he was teaching. And also I want to reveal and make clear the supremely great teachings of the Tathagata. Therefore I will briefly explain the teachings of Mahayana. Question. Mahayana teachings are too many to be counted. Even the sayings of the Buddha alone cannot be exhausted. How can you explain and expound them all? Answer. Because of this, I said at the beginning, this would be a brief explanation. Why is it called Mahayana? Answer. Mahayana is the superior of the two vehicles. And hence it is called the great vehicle. This vehicle can help people reach the ideal of the Buddhas, and hence it is called great. This is the vehicle which is ridden by Buddhas and great men, and hence it is called great. It can eliminate the great sufferings of sentient beings and give great benefits, and hence is called great. It is the vehicle ridden by great persons such as bodhisattvas, Avalokitesvara, Prapta, Manjushri, and Maitreya, and hence it is called great. This vehicle can exhaust the bottom of all the truths, and hence is called great. Again, in the Prajna Sutra, the Buddha himself says that the teachings of Mahayana are immeasurable and boundless. For this reason, it is called great. One of the profoundest teachings of Mahayana is called emptiness. If one can understand this doctrine, he can understand Mahayana and possesses the 6 paramitas without hindrance. Therefore, I want only to explain emptiness. To explain emptiness and enter into its meaning, one should use the 12 gates. So this statement concludes the preface of the book. The following is the main body of chapter 1. The first gate is concerned with causal conditions. It is said, things are produced from various conditions, and hence have no self-nature. If they have no self-nature, how can there be such things? The whole treatise includes 26 verses. This is the first verse. I think we can probably. Do you see how granular this thinking is? Phenomena, as I was saying earlier, are produced through a set of conditions from tendencies. Remember, tendencies, conditions, phenomena. Instantiations of phenomena. The phenomena, you could say, is even a predecessor of formation. Formation as seen as instantiation, I should say. Instantiation has ahead of it several things have to come together in order to instantiate any thing, any phenomena. And so once you start dissecting what a thing is, a phenomena is, and how it comes into being, you can then, by going backwards, understand emptiness as not being nothing, but instead being where formations are not yet occurring, but it is a fundament from which formations come. The word I use, potential. Potential is not a thing. The word potential is a thing. It's made up of letters, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, you can argue all of that too. But please understand, the word potential is an indication that nothing has happened yet. That there is only opportunity. Well, there's another word you could use, right? How would you define opportunity or potential in a physical way? You can't. So in Buddhism, we understand that prior to thingness, phenomena, there is a condition. And that condition is a condition of no phenomena. But that does not remove that a condition is in itself a thing. But it is a thing in the sense of opportunity, potential, not manifest. Therefore, it is noumena rather than phenomena. Does that make sense? Okay. Now we'll come across another aspect, definition of this problematic with words thing to define. Self-nature. What the heck is self-nature? There's a lot going on in that hyphenated word. So how are we going to use words to describe those words? Chushing Shbhavava is the key concept Nagarjuna wants to refute. He is against the ontologization of any entity or object. A similar issue is examined in the middle treatise. Emptiness here means without self-nature or without own essence. So this is to say that you would be making a mistake if you thought that this whole, let's call it a field of potential or opportunity, does not contain within it little packets of Coca-Cola or mountains or universe or galaxies or cars or relationships, right? It's not that these things are just waiting to manifest and they're just all standing in line. I'm an opportunity to be this. I'm an opportunity to be that. That would be a misunderstanding of the word emptiness. Emptiness, Noumena, is a state of non-differentiation. Right? Let's talk about differentiation. When you look at a piece of paper and you look close at a distance, it's just a, let's say it's white paper, it's just a rectangle of paper, whiteness. But as you move closer and closer and closer to it, you start to see the fibers, the pores, the little bumps. No matter how smooth the paper is, you can go in close enough to start to see differentiations, shadows, differentiations amongst what makes up the paper, right? But that's what samsara is. That's what our human minds do constantly, is differentiate. And for something to go from noumena to phenomena is itself the step-by-step process of a differentiation. But I want you to understand that, as my analogy of the piece of paper comes, that piece of paper is itself a differentiation of whatever the paper is made of. If the paper is made of wood, then the wood comes from a tree, and that tree comes from a seed, and that seed came from another tree. You can get endlessly looped to the point where the very seed, the original seed, was something manifest of its own right, a differentiation of what? And this is where the Buddhist mind goes. So before any phenomena, if you go back far enough, you will go to a formative energy. The idea of seed. What was the first thing to spawn the seed? And if you can identify that first thing, then you again are at the beginning of the equation, because where did that thing come from? How did it come to be? From its origins, where did that come to be? And you can keep going and going and going until you will get to a place where it's just an idea. And this is the conundrum of Buddhism, because if you have an idea, then you've already instantiated it. The idea and the thing itself are the same thing. This is why everything we experience in life is enlightenment, is nirvana itself. Because to experience something is to have manifested it, experienced it, and moved on. This all happens moment to moment to moment. This is why you and I perceive life as linear, because in every moment we reinstantiate, and that's a new moment. Birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. So in between birth and death, is there really anything? Is there a consistency? Am I, Sylvain, made of the Sylvain of a moment ago? You would say, sure. Am I the Sylvain that was made 10 trillion moments ago? 10 years ago? 50 years ago? All you'd have to do is look at a photo album and see I am nothing like the Sylvain I was 50 years ago. How is that possible? So if you look at the spaces between when I was in the photograph and when I was next in a photograph, what went on between those moments, that's emptiness. What went on before 200 years ago, before my parents existed? Was I in some ether waiting to be here? No. No, there was just all empty potential for a billion Sylvains and no Sylvains. They're equal because they're equally ridiculous. Because Sylvain only exists where and when? Now. Now again. Again now. Now. Because past and future are illusions that we create in the now. Everything else is not real. It's not extant. It's just an idea, a thought, a passing thought. This is probably the most difficult idea in Buddhism to grasp. And this is what he means by self-nature or own essence. There is no essence of 7-year, 3-month, 4-day, 1 hour, 1 minute, 1 second Sylvain. It appeared and disappeared, replaced by the next moment, but not replaced by stepping on it, but because in the next moment required another instantiation of all of those energies that came together to make the previous moment. So you could draw a line, perhaps, through the tendencies and conditions that arrived at this moment, and that they arrive at this moment, and this moment, and this moment. But those moments are gone. They'll never be back. And the next moment is unknowable, except that there are tendencies and conditions heading into it. To say that there's a fundamental particle, the Sylvain particle, is incredibly ignorant. Right? Is there some Brenda dust out there? That's just nuts, right? There are 4 conditioning causes: a cause, objects of sensation, immediately preceding condition, and, of course, the predominant influence. There's no 5th. Again, Nagarjuna is drilling down into this momentary instantiation thing, that there's a tendency and cause moving through time that then expresses itself. That is the object of sensation, because until it's expressed, it doesn't know how to feel. immediately preceding condition, that leads to something else, and of course, the predominant influence, and that, in its instantiation, influences the next moment, which it no longer is. That's why there's no fifth. As once it's influenced, its role is done. It no longer exists. The next moment exists, which had as its, let's go backwards, preceding condition, the object of sensation that was born of cause, or tendencies and conditions. Every single, however minute you can divide that moment into, an angstrom, a Planck, choose your measurement, a photon. On the other hand, he says, the product consists in its conditioning causes. On the other hand, the causes do not consist of themselves. How can a product resulting from conditioning causes not consisting of themselves be consisting of those causes? Okay, this is where we're going to pause, because now we arrive at the difficulty of Nagarjuna, or reading Nagarjuna. His logic is so granular, I say again, it's not for everyone. But if you enjoy this kind of thing, you can just take that paragraph and reread it, and it will make sense. He's defining exactly what I've been struggling to define, is that just because a moment follows a previous moment does not mean that that moment has every quality or is constructed of the previous moment, because that moment is itself a singular thing. But it is a singular thing which also no longer exists. And this is why there is no self-nature. There is no, what was the word he used? Oh gosh. No own, what was it? No own essence. The idea of an essence is purely magical. That something has an essence. There is no essence of anything, right? There are only, and we recite this at the end of the second chapter of the Lotus Sutra all the time, the 10 factors, or the 10, is it factors? Okay. So you have all of these aspects of Oh, now I'm not going to find it. Sorry, I hate fumbling like this. Okay, yeah. Reality consists of the appearance, nature, entity, power, influence, inherent cause, relation, latent effect, manifest effect, and their consistency from beginning to end. So that those 10 10 aspects of reality, 10 natures, describe every single moment in the same way that Nagarjuna is describing the instantiation of something, and as he will continue, then the destruction of, or the falling apart of, or the decay of that moment as it leads to the next. These are minuscule moments of time, because in Buddhism, as I've discussed before and will discover, time is the predominant illusion. Okay, I feel like I'm trying to teach a master class to something that should be just easily understood, and I want to move on from it. But at the same time, I understand that some of us get locked into this battle of what is self, non-self, what is emptiness, what is all of this. So unfortunately, the only way I can think of to really destruct that or instruct that or dissect that Buddhist thought is the same way Nagarjuna is right now, except that I'm going to fumble through trying to make it more palatable. And we've taken our first step, and we'll continue in the next one. Thank you for being here. Please let me know in the comments if this is just not a path you need to go on to fully understand, or if you appreciate this kind of thing, I'll keep going. We'll only get better at it, right? So I'm not going to shy away from any of your questions. Some of you have wanted to know more about Nagarjuna, and so I'm starting. If this is not what you thought it was going to be, let me know. If this is exactly the kind of thing you were hoping to hear, let me know that. You will guide how I go from this point forward in our study and practice of Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Take care of your health. Be kind to one another. Watch your moments. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. Hey, thank you for being here. Did you know there's a third way you can help support this channel? And it won't cost you a cent. Yep. If you are not able to be a patron on Patreon or use the PayPal me at .com at Sifu Sylvain because you don't have the financial fortune to help support this channel right now, you, as I say, always support this channel by watching, but you can also help us grow so that maybe one day we can get over 10,000 subscribers and YouTube will grace us with monetization. It's not a lot, but if you can make sure you're subscribed and share a video like a simple one, just go into the search criteria and type monk and you'll have a video that'll come up that's been up for years about what is a monk. You know, it's called monk, who, how, where, something like that. That might be a great introduction to somebody who doesn't understand what a monk is to begin with. It's a tool. Use this channel as a tool to help you with your bodhisattva practice, and share a video to somebody who you think, oh, I know somebody who'll benefit from watching this. And in that way, you can help us grow. And that's a really good way to help your practice along as well. So just wanted to drop that in on you in case that's something that you might find useful. Take care of yourself again, and I'll see you soon. Bye.